is Betsy Roseberg, well, quick question. How many of you sort of fell into technical writing? Right? Yeah, me too. Sort of like happened. She, however, went to school for it. She got her degree in, now what was it, technical and scientific communication?
Scientific and technical communication.
And it was a Bachelor of Science in it, so science of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Betsy Roseberg, and I'm a technical writer at Relic. And today I'll be talking to you about how you can use CSAT data to improve your documentation in a variety of ways. Now, just to clarify before I get started, CSAT is customer satisfaction. While that might be intuitive to a lot of you, some quick Googling also reveals that CSAT is the College Scholastic Ability Test of South Korea and chemical security assessment tools, neither of which will be discussed in my talk today. Instead, I'll be focusing on how tech writers can use CSAT data to improve their documentation in a lot of cool ways. Now, as tech writers, wouldn't it be really great if you could connect directly with your audience, know how useful your documentation actually is for your audience, and let your audience help improve the documentation for you? Well, you can, and we do. At docs.newrelic.com, every single public-facing doc on our site has a CSAT section, just like you see here, with a, was this document helpful, yes or no, and a open comment field box to add in specifics what did or didn't work for some users. And that's on every single public-facing doc we have, which is 921 of them. And that's a lot of docs, especially when we only have a handful of tech writers. And with that kind of ratio, we really needed a direct line to customers, and this is it. And boy, howdy, is this thing useful. And I know some of you might be thinking, okay, a comment box isn't that revolutionary. Well, last year at Write the Docs, actually, we asked people if they track CSAT, and some people just said, no, hard pass. And then some people said, yeah, we do track that. And we said, great, what do you do with it? And they were like, we don't know. So today I'll be talking to you about how we use it and how we use it to improve our documentation. But you might also be thinking, I bet they get a lot of kind of silly, not so useful comments, along with maybe a few useful comments. And you're right. And now, just to clear the air before I get to the useful ones, let's take a look at some of the not so useful ones. CSAT submission 3758. Was this document helpful? No. Comments? No thanks. I am busy. Now, this user was apparently too busy to leave a constructive comment, but just not busy enough to not leave it blank. And so, while we can look at this jumble of poor grammar and be thankful that they commented at all, there's really not much we can do with that. There's nothing in that comment that says, oh great, this is how we can improve our documentation. So we'll do another one. CSAT submission 4482. Was this document helpful? No. Comments? More pandas. Now sure, we could maybe take this comment to heart and improve our documentation with pandas in a variety of ways. But while that is great in some ways because they're adorable, it's really not going to be useful to our general audience if they're looking at a troubleshooting doc because something's gone terribly wrong with our product. So this one's probably another pass. But believe it or not, useful comments do exist. In fact, the majority of comments that we receive are useful in one way or another. What we're really looking for are the thoughtful, salient comments we often receive from customers that let us know how we can improve documentation to better help our audience. And now I'll go through a couple of those examples and let you know how we took action on those comments. CSAT submission 1343. Was this document helpful? No. Comments? The command did not work, and I'm creating PHP error logs all over the place. Not a real great comment to receive on your documentation. So in this situation, a user specifically wrote to us because something in our documentation was wrong and was causing errors. So just to make sure it really was with our documentation, not something that the user had set up, we met with a PHP subject matter expert to review the document for accuracy, And while reviewing it, we did find that one of our command lines was out of date and would definitely result in the errors. So with our subject matter expert, we fixed the command, spruced up the doc, published it out again, and we haven't had a complaint like this since. All because that user took the time to write in and say, hey, something's not working, I'm getting some errors. Do another one. CSAT submission 4210. Was this document helpful? No. Comments? Please can you add documentation for New Relic admin record deploy? Now in this situation, a user found one of our docs and just didn't see some of the information that they expected to see. So here we met with a Python SME to review our Python agent admin script document, and while working with our SME, they agreed that we should add information for record deploy. And ultimately, we added an entire new section to the Python agent admin script doc, specifically on record deploy, just because that user took time to be like, hey, I kind of want to know more about record deploy, and we were like, okay, we got you, here you go. All because that user just took time to let us know that they thought something was a little lacking. CSAT submission 3941. Was this document helpful? Yes. Comments? One correction, the nginx plus passenger config file I had to use was passenger set header x request start. Now in this situation, our documentation had previously said x underscore request underscore start. But because of that user's comment, we reviewed that document with a subject matter expert who was well-versed in passenger, and he agreed that with certain versions, it really should be dashes and not underscores. So we updated our documentation, and ultimately we made a helpful doc even more helpful. As you'll recall in that last slide, the user said, yes, this document was helpful, but something was kind of incorrect that I found that worked, and you didn't have that, so here you go, I'm letting you know. And actually in all three of those examples that I just showed, users reached out to us because they caught something or knew something was lacking, but more importantly, they caught things that we as tech writers had missed. Newsflash, not all of us tech writers are world-class coders, but a lot of our users are, especially if you're writing for more technical audiences. And because of that, it only makes sense that you open up communication between yourselves and your audience, and CSAT is an amazing way to do that. CSAT helps create a symbiotic relationship between you and your audience, where all of a sudden your super knowledgeable, highly specialized audience is working with you to create super knowledgeable, highly specialized documentation. Your users are able to reach out and tell you exactly what they want or are expecting to find a doc, and you can deliver that information right back to them. But you might be wondering, doesn't this take a lot of time to wade through the useful and not so useful comments? And honestly, not really. I mean, sure, if you had one tech writer at the end of every month who had to go through 31 days of data with comments about pandas and corrections about code, it would probably take a long time. But as a way to remedy this, at New Relic, we have one tech writer each week that we affectionately call the hero. And the hero every day looks at the CSAT comments and looks for the ones that are useful and not useful and kind of wades through them, which ultimately takes about 10 minutes. I'm sure that's 10 minutes a day you could be spent drinking a little more coffee or something, but we find that it's worth it. Especially because CSAT doesn't just connect customers and tech writers. We've also had comments from people who are trying to get in touch with support, but for one reason or another couldn't file tickets. We've had complaints about our own DocSite functionality and our product UI. We've had inquiries about a dozen different free t-shirts that somehow got lost in the mail. We've even had questions about account pricing or invoices. But why do all of these comments end up on a DocSite? As the purveyors of information and troubleshooting, we're the go-to resource for a lot of lost customers, and we also get an unobstructed view of customers using our products in real time. And with that, we get a glimpse at all of their frustrations. For example, our documentation could be absolutely perfect, but if something in our product UI is really confusing, customers are going to find their way to documentation to try to understand it better. Because documentation is that go-to resource for lost customers, especially self-service ones. Now, what I've shown you so far is pretty great as long as there's a comment. But what if there are no comments? Is there any way that you can improve your documentation without people actually commenting in this little itty-bitty comment box, and instead just using yes-no data? Can yes-no really improve your documentation? Hell yeah, it can. While actual comments let you know specifically what might work or not work in a document, yes/no data lets you know how useful your document actually is to your general audience. Most users, if they take the time to comment in the comment box, we found that they find a very specific detail that was either great or garbage within our documents. But when users just select yes/no, you get a general overview of how they feel about your document. Maybe they found most of the information they needed and voted yes, or maybe something was kind of lacking, but they just didn't quite know what it was. Yes/no data lets you understand how useful docs are. Now let's take a look at some of our own New Relic docs. With New Relic Insights, we track the yes/no data of every single public-facing doc that we have. You can see up here at the top, Servers installation, Ubuntu, and Debian has 5 total responses, and all of them are yes votes, which is something that we really want to see. When something like that happens, we look at the doc and try to understand what's really resonating with users in that particular document. And in this one, we actually tried a new, very complex table structure to convey a whole series of different information, and customers seem to really be enjoying that. So since noticing that, we've emulated a similar structure in documents that have a similar type of information. However, a few spots below that, remove applications and servers from the New Relic UI has 4 responses, and every single one of those responses is a no vote. That's a trend we don't like to see. But typically when this happens, we'll meet with a subject matter expert and try to understand what's wrong with the document or what's lacking. And this is actually a perfect example of CSAT connecting customers to other functions of our company, because while reviewing this with an SME, we found that there was actually a UI glitch, and that was resulting in the negative CSAT feedback. One of our steps said specifically to select a gear icon in our product UI, and while looking at it, we couldn't find the gear icon, which is kind of a problem. And it turns out there was a very weird UI glitch where the gear icon was disappearing for some users and staying there for other ones. So when it was disappearing, those users couldn't actively complete all of the steps. But since discovering that, we got in contact with our UI people and we fixed it, and the CSAT for this document has actually been on the up and up since then. But yes/no data doesn't just let you know how useful docs are, it also helps you prioritize your work more efficiently. For example, if you were a team of tech writers and you had 3 documents that desperately needed to be updated, it's pretty easy to know which one you'd want to update between Doc A that has 1,300 views, 5 yes votes, 1 no vote, Doc B that has 60 views, 1 yes vote, 2 no votes, and Doc C that has 950 views, 1 yes, 6 no votes. Clearly, something is super wrong with Doc C. So you can use your CSAT data to also efficiently prioritize your work and compare the relevancy of docs against each other to know which ones you should update before the other ones. And CSAT data is really great if you have any sort of public-facing documentation, but if you're like us and you have thousands of users looking at those documents every single day and you have hundreds and hundreds of docs, it's an absolute necessity to know that your audience is satisfied with the documentation you're putting out there for them to read. In fact, it's such a necessity for us that we're improving on it a little bit further. We just started implementing OAuth data, which is super cool. When users are logged into our product UI, we can tell what percentage of our users are in a different country, or using Internet Explorer or Safari, or we can know what type of products users have, or how many enterprise level accounts or light accounts are looking at certain documents, which is super cool. Also, we're tracking clicks on documents, so we can tell the general pathway that users have through our documentation. For example, if you're a new user using our Java agent, do you go from Java installation docs to Java frameworks? Or do you go from Java installation to Java compatibility and requirements? We're also planning an entire site redesign with CSAT feedback in mind, along with other comments that we get like, no thanks, I'm busy, or corrections on things. We also get a lot of great comments like, hey, your search sucks. Or we wish your homepage was a little more concise, or a whole bunch of other things that tell us how users are using our actual website. And because of those comments, we're going to be tailoring our website to fit our audience a bit better in the future. And now, everything I've shown you so far shows you how our CSAT has improved our own docs, helped to improve our doc site functionality, and connected customers with other parts of our company that might not have had contact with customers in the past. And even with CSAT, we've actually been able to write documentation that satisfies the absolute surliest of critics, fellow tech writers. CSAT submission 3319. Was this document helpful? Yes. Comments? Your documentation is pretty terrific. Kudos from a fellow tech writer. And I'd like to stress that that's not a plant. This is like our favorite CSAT comment we have ever received, because we know that you guys are all a bunch of toughies. So we were really proud of this one. But that's it for my talk today, and we're always looking to improve the amount of CSAT feedback we receive, so if you guys track CSAT too, we're having an unconference later, and come find us and we'd love to talk to you about it. All right, thanks. Oh.